Alright, let me demonstrate a flick for you first. Let you take a look first. This is a flick. Did everyone notice my contact There is point? Always a pause before executing the stroke. This is an active power generation. Everyone, take a look, pause, right? Then execute the stroke. Pause, active power generation. Pause, active power generation. Pause, active power generation. Where do I apply my power? I use my fingers and wrist. I use my fingers and wrist, right? Wait a bit. Fingers and wrist generating power. Wait a bit. Wait a bit. Fingers and wrist. Wait a bit. Fingers and wrist. Wait a bit. Fingers and wrist. The flick is an active power generation. It utilizes the fingers and wrist much more. As for the timing of this flick, what are we looking for? We look for the high point of the bounce. So for this kind of active power generation, against no spin balls where you can't borrow much power. Since we can't borrow power, don't force it. We have to wait a bit. Everyone must first learn to pause. Pause, let everyone see. Look, I don't shoot out right after the bounce. If I push with this rhythm, if I push, I will easily make a mistake, unable to borrow power. Pushing then I just wait a bit. Add a bit of my own power first. Wait for the ball to pause. Come, look, everyone watch again and execute. Everyone look at my rhythm. Pause, execute. Pause, execute. Pause, execute. Pause, execute, look, pause, execute. When we flick, what do we mainly rely on for power? Mainly rely on our fingers and wrist. To drive our forearm, to generate the power, right? It doesn't mean using the upper arm, nor does it mean using the shoulder. Therefore, since we use fingers and wrist to drive the forearm, then when we take power, the backswing to load power, what is it actually doing? It's moving our fingers and wrist outward. Opening them outward. Look, this is called opening outward. When opening the fingers and wrist, it might naturally bring the forearm along a bit. When loading power, the upper arm and shoulder must be relaxed. And then, while stepping in and taking the backswing, what are we doing? Opening our fingers, wrist, and forearm. Then find this high point. The high point after the pause. Then it's easy to apply power. But you guys, look, why is my deceptiveness strong? Why is my execution fast? I just utilize this point. The speed is naturally fast. If I swing my arm too much, making the motion too big, the bigger the motion, the slower it is. The slower it is, the lower the ball's quality. You actually have to first find a process of pushing from back to front. You don't need to worry about everyone. The wrist first. Look, first learn to find this. First, learn to find this. First, learn to find this. Because when you push from back to front, to impact this ball, only then can you feel, after I hit it, the ball is moving forward. You feel that you can drive this ball out. It can be driven out. Then, during the pushing process, we then snap the wrist, right? That's it. Everyone look, learn to push first. Look, learn to push first. Actually, this is a correct framework of a flicking motion. Learn to push first. Look, then what do we add? Fingers and wrist. Add some fingers and wrist. We must make our back to front power generation. Back to front power generation into a framework. Then add your fingers and wrist. Meaning, during the pushing process, find the power generation of the fingers and wrist. Let me show you the push process again. With fingers and wrist generating power, look. Why do I generate power now? I use so much power from my fingers and wrist. Yet the ball doesn't easily miss. Why doesn't it easily miss? Everyone, look. Because my motions framework hasn't changed. The power generated by my fingers and wrist didn't cause my motion to deform compared to looping. In looping, I can use my legs, hips, back to front power. I can use my waist. But for my flick, I can only use fingers and wrist, forearm, and then I still have to. If I pull upward, the power is already insufficient. If I pull upward, this ball definitely won't easily cross the net. So, you must learn to push forward first. Push it forward. Look, only when pushed out can the ball moving forward. You feel, if I use more force, the ball's power will be greater. This is the correct way. Then, during the pushing process, learn to use fingers and wrist to add power. Look. Open, snap. See? Open, snap, right? Open, snap. Open, snap. Look, open, snap, right? What goes out is the arm. What snaps back is the forearm. No, fingers, the wrist. Meaning there needs to be a process of snapping the racket head. What does snapping the racket head mean? Look, when you prepare to take a backswing, where does the head of your racket? including pen hold. Look, pointing
Where does
to
it
what?
point?
Back right, lower back right, right? Then, as my motion completes, when I flick, where will my racket head point? It will point forward, outward, and forward, right? Same for shake
Outward
and forward, outward. This is the process of snapping the racket head. The racket head goes from pointing outward to forward. The motion goes from back to front, right? Ultimately, your power must definitely be directed forward. So the ball will have forward power. If you are snapping, where are you snapping? Snapping inward. Snapping inward will make it shorter. If you push forward, this ball will have power. Let's take a look. Look, when I use my arm to snap inward, it looks like this. Snapping inward makes the ball shorter. Look, isn't the flicked ball very short? The flicked ball is very short. I snap it very quickly. Look, I snap it very quickly. What happens to the ball? It drops right after crossing the net. But now, if I use my fingers and wrist to push the racket head forward, look at the quality of this ball. Look, it reaches deep, right? Reach deep, right? Look, my ultimate follow through. Look where it is. Pointing forward, not here. It is right here. Look, 1, 2, snap. 1, 2, snap. Hey, 1, 2, snap. Let me flick a couple for everyone to see. First open, then snap. Open. Push the racket. Head forward. Open. Push the racket head forward. Open. Push the racket head forward. We want to flick to create power. Create speed. Where does its power come from, friends? It definitely comes from the impact, right? So we must give the ball. The moment we contact the ball, it's a process of impacting it first. Sometimes our racket cannot be too closed. If it's too closed, everyone look. If my hand is the ball, if it's too closed, you are brushing the top of the ball. It becomes like this. If you flick with it too closed, look, hitting directly forward. You will hit the net. Then you can only scrape the ball upward. That kind of ball is meaningless. So open it up. Look. Open the racket face a bit, so you can hit the ball flat frontal impact. Look, hit the ball flat. Look, if I only hit it flat and don't snap the racket head, it will just fly outward. But now, if I snap the racket head, look. The ball lands on the table. See? Come, everyone look. 1, 2, snap, 2, snap. Look, open it up a bit to open it first. Hit the ball first before flicking. Hit it first, then push forward to impact it. Hit it first, then push forward to impact it. Snap the racket head, meaning the racket head. The process of the racket head pointing from outward to forward. This is snapping the racket head. Snapping the racket head compared to you consciously trying to snap your forearm, Snapping the forearm is the process of your forearm going from pointing outward to forward. Snapping the racket head. Snapping the racket head. Snapping the wrist. Actually, it's snapping the wrist.